just you do your very best work. You stand out from the crowd. You're not afraid to, you always got to ask for the sale. That's another big thing with trying to make an impression and make inroads into making a living as an artist. Never be afraid to ask for the sale. And when I first started out, I never asked for the sale. If you were looking at one of your pieces of art in a show and you were talking with someone, you can always just say, can I wrap it up? I can come out and hang it in your house. I'd be happy to do that. And you would be surprised the number of times people say, yeah, okay, let's do that.
Welcome to the BoldBrush Show, where we believe that fortune favors the bold brush. My name is Laura Arango-Bayer, and I'm your host. For those of you who are new to the podcast, we are a podcast that covers art marketing techniques and all sorts of business tips specifically to help artists learn to better sell their work. We interview artists at all stages of their careers, as well as others who are in careers tied to the art world in order to hear their advice and insights. For today's episode, we sat down with Steve Atkinson, an illustrator turned fine artist with a deep-rooted love for the stories of the American West. He tells us all about his past as an illustrator and the lessons that it carried over, from the artistic techniques that help him tell stories through his work, to the discipline and business aspects that help him sell his artwork today. He also reminds us of the practical matters involved in the business of selling art, such as asking for the sale, not being afraid to promote yourself, building relationships with possible collectors, and to always network whenever possible. Finally, he tells us about his mission to pass it forward by teaching others on his YouTube channel and his awesome upcoming workshops at the Bosque Art Center in Clifton, Texas, and at Tapatio Spring Hill Country Resort in Boerne, Texas. Welcome, Steve, to the BoldBrush Show. How are you today?
Thank you. I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. This is, I'm already having fun talking to you.
Good.
So
what is it,
I'm
about
very
midnight
happy.
Where you're at?
Oh, no, it's maybe like almost 9 p.m. my time. We're only 20 minutes from
my
9
bedtime.
PM. Oh, well, not mine. My bedtime is a lot later than that. Busy minds, they tend to not be good for sleeping.
Got it.
But yeah. So Steve, I'm very happy to have you on the show. Your work is very your work is so full of story. I think it's some of the work that I've seen that I'm just like, wow, I feel like I could see the entire story just unfolding in front of me, just through the colors and the characters and
you're so sweet. Thank
everything.
you. I appreciate that. That's really what I aim for. Thank you.
You're doing
it. Good.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, but before we dive into your lovely work, do you mind telling us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure. My name's Steve Atkinson. I'm a fine art painter full-time. And before I made the transition, I was an illustrator for about 25 years or so. The first 15 of those, I was freelance. Well, I started out at doing comps and storyboards at an advertising agency in Cleveland. Then I was hired at an illustration house, which there aren't any more of those around, but there were 6 to 8 of us illustrating in Cleveland, and the salesman would bring in illustrations for us to do. So we had to be good at a lot of different mediums. So anything from graphite to charcoal to pen and ink to airbrush to pastel, watercolor, just about anything. And so I did that for a while and then started freelancing. And I did that for a number of years and then got hired on as the lead illustrator at an package design company. And so I did a lot of illustrations of fruit. I did kids cereal boxes like Trix and Lucky Charms and Count Chocula and all of those. I did the illustrations for the cover and the games on the back. So I did that, children's games for Milton Bradley and Parker Brothers. And then when I got married, I was up in Minnesota at the time, and my wife and I were out on a walk. Happened to be fall, just the peak season of autumn, and just looked around and I thought, I need to learn how to paint if I'm ever going to do it, I need to start now. I was 40 years old. And I told my wife that, and she just turned to me and said, well, can you wait until we get back home before you start? I said, yeah, I can do that. So for about 5 years, I took classes. I got up before I would go to work in the morning, 2 or 3 hours, I would paint, because I knew that if I waited until I got home, I wasn't going to be mentally ready to be able to do that. I'd be too exhausted. So I painted in the morning for about 5 years, got into a gallery or two and won some awards. And that was, I gave myself about 5 years in order to be able to learn what I needed to know and see if I could make the transition. That's about what it took. And so in 2008, I quit my illustration job and started painting full time. The problem was that I'm drawn to the American West, the Southwest in particular. And I was living in Minneapolis, Minnesota, painting cowboys out of my basement. And so I knew that we needed to be living in the American West. And my wife happened to be from Tucson, Arizona. And so we started looking at maybe getting a second home. We found a place here in Prescott because Tucson and Phoenix are too dang hot. And so we live here, and we're at about 5,000 feet. So we're kind of called the high prairie here. And so we get snow, not much. It melts off right away. So one of the happiest days of my life was the day I got to sell my snow thrower in Minnesota and move here. So yeah, it's felt like home ever since started looking. We had people tell us, because we considered moving to Texas. We had people tell us, Texas is awfully hot. And it's great for Western art, but try Prescott, Arizona. So when we came out here, we fell in love with the courthouse. It has this old-fashioned courthouse here, and the Phippen Museum is a Western art museum. And we knew, okay, if the Phippen Museum can flourish here, this is a good place for a Western artist to live. And there's some amazing artists who live here. There's Bill Anton, there's John Coleman, Robert Peters, there's Bill Kramer. There's so many people. And so I figured it must be something in the water. And once I moved here, I realized it wasn't something in the water. You still have to work really hard at it. And we just love it. We can't imagine living anywhere else.
That's
So
awesome.
that's it. Yeah, my wife Ann is my studio manager, my
Aw.
muse, and so we get to work together all day, every day. It's actually been wonderful. A lot of people would say, "Oh, you don't want to work, with your spouse," but we have a great time. It's just so much
Yeah.
fun.
Oh,
And
that's so
our
lovely.
cat, we have a black cat named Boo. I
Aw.
call her the Boo the Wonder Cat.
Why is
So,
she the Wonder Cat?
oh, she's just so sweet, and she loves being around people. So often cats they want to be by themselves.
Yeah.
If if there's the opportunity for her to come and we have people come over, she'll get right up in the middle of everybody and just she loves people.
That's
So
adorable.
yeah,
Aw.
yeah, she's
That's
great.
unusual and adorable. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I agree, being able to work with your spouse, alongside them and have them support you and you support them. I think that
Hmm.
that also, it's so wonderful for a relationship because, you have to get to know each other even deeper and,
Yeah.
kind of like work with each other's strengths and weaknesses, to balance each other out
Hmm.
to make things work. I mean, you're not the first person who's told me that their spouse helps them out with their art career.
Yeah.
So, it works
Yeah.
out for some
Well, the
people.
the great thing, we tell people that Anne does everything in the studio except for paint. She helps me with the framing. She helps me with packing up paintings. She does all of the bookkeeping, all of the, oh, any of the mail that comes in. She's my social director. So if someone wants to come over into the studio, she sets up a meeting or she sets up, people coming over. it just couldn't. Her strengths are my weaknesses, and her weaknesses are my strengths. So it just works out great.
Oh, I hope you give
Yeah.
her a salary. That sounds like she really helps out.
No, she's not here. Okay. No, we're okay.
Oh
No, we
man.
share everything, and that
Yeah,
includes, whatever comes into the studio.
of course. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
but that's so awesome. And I find it interesting too how you mentioned that you were always drawn to the American West, right? There was always just something about it. Why exactly did it draw you in so much? What was it about it?
Well, there's a couple reasons. One is when I was growing up, there were so many Westerns on television and at the movies. It was a cultural phenomenon, and I loved it. And when I was growing up, we always had Westerns on in the house. And so it just kind of seeps into your bones. And so many of my art heroes are Western artists. From N.C. Wyeth, who went out and started painting the American West as an assignment when he was just getting started, to Tom Lovell, um, Russell, and Remington. They were all illustrators, and they found something in the West that that really they connected with. And I found that, I've had people ask me, why do you paint cowboys? Part of it is that I love the culture. I love the code of the West. You ride for the brand. You work until the job's done. Your word is your bond. That whole thing, and it's still alive to this day. And the other thing is the number of stories that you can tell when you're painting the American West, because there's 100 years or more of the cowboy and moving cattle and pioneers who went across in these rickety old wagons, and the Native American tribes that they ran into, and sometimes it worked well and sometimes not so much, and the stories of the Native American. So I could live 10 lifetimes and still never even just scratch the surface on the stories that you can tell. And for me, that storytelling, that's everything when it comes to art.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And definitely, having studied illustration, having been an illustrator, it definitely has, that gives you a lot of the tools that go alongside
Mm,
storytelling, like
so true.
I was looking at I think it's Creative Illustration by Andrew Loomis, and he just covers
Hmm.
like a lot of information on, the narrative side of
Right,
illustration, which unfortunately, in normal painting schools, you don't really get that. You just get
no,
taught the technique. You don't really get the whole full image of composition
right,
and then how to tell the story with the key of the values, right? If you want high key
right,
versus low key versus dramatic, like it has completely different ways of being
right.
approached. So I actually wanted to know
Making
because
a
you
making a focal point, making the focal
yes,
point. That's
exactly.
so much when it comes to illustration, is you very early on learn that there's in the story you need to have your eye go to a certain place. And how do you do that? What are the tools? Whether you have your lightest light and your darkest dark there, most colorful areas, whether you key everything back or key everything higher. I learned that all from illustration and studying those golden age of illustrators. So, and then they had a course back in the 40s. What was it called? The Fine Artist Workshop or course, and Norman Rockwell and Andrew Loomis and all of those guys. They happened to. You could send away for this course, and they would teach you week by week things that you needed to know, and you just had to kind of follow that. And now that was way before my time, but I do happen to have those books, and I've absorbed them as much as I can. So um, you know fine art fine artists, I love them, but my muse has always come from that golden age of illustrator section. And if the people who are watching, maybe if you've never really checked them out, there's a lot of, just look under Golden Age of Illustration illustrators. And so you've got obviously Norman Rockwell, you have N.C. Wyeth, you have Howard Pyle, you have Maxfield Parrish. And these guys were all illustrating books. This is what they did because the television wasn't there. And so this is the way that people were enticed to buy magazines or buy books. They were illustrated. And those illustrations, they were looked down on, by fine artists. But now, Norman Rockwell paintings are going for millions of dollars. And every year with the heritage auctions, those paintings and painters are becoming more and more collectible.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's really interesting too because, at the turn of the century, there was such a huge drop off in realism. Of course, the
Hmm.
camera had taken over most of everything. So I
Yeah,
feel like also with illustration, they also by extension basically saved realism from extinction
true.
because whatever happened after
Right,
throughout all of the 20th century, there was
right.
so little realism that was happening. It was very much underground or very much frowned upon, or there were even people saying that it was
Yeah.
dead.
Poo-pooed.
So
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
So I'm thankful for illustrators at the turn of the century for keeping that torch going. And I think I've mentioned this also in previous episodes how much I admire illustrators
yeah,
because it is. I feel like the things that fine art is missing is a lot of the stuff that illustration has. So I also
yeah.
encourage listeners to check out illustration if they're
Good.
really serious about storytelling through painting.
Yeah. The other thing that I would mention is that the other thing that illustration gave me and being an illustrator is understanding, and people are going to roast me for this, understanding that art is a business. And so if you want to make a living at art, you need to not just be excellent at your technique, especially if you're, a representational artist. You also need to be able to um, understand that there are deadlines, especially if you're in galleries or in shows. You need to be able to get things done on time. You need to make a profit, make a little bit of a profit. Otherwise, we're going to end up like so many artists that just can't make a living at it. And understanding, oh, the other big thing, the big difference between illustration and fine art is that with fine art, it really is centered on it's a relationship based way of living. With illustration, you have your commercial clients come to you. With fine art, you need to have collectors in your life who value your work, and in order to do that, yeah, they're going to follow you because they like your work. But so many collectors really like to know the artists that they're collecting. And this is true in all business. People do business with people that they like. And so having that email list is so important. Having social media is important. Advertising can be important, but picking up the phone and calling people who have bought your work and staying in touch with them, so important, and something that I'm trying to get better at because I'm a big introvert. But luckily, I have learned that one-on-one, I'm really good. But talking to big crowds of people or going to shows where there's a big crowd, that's a little more daunting for me.
That's understandable.
Yeah,
I completely
yeah,
relate to that. It is definitely a lot easier to, have your focus on one person. I
yeah.
also get very overwhelmed in large groups.
Hmm.
But yeah,
Yeah,
those are excellent, excellent, excellent points. And I think, especially, if you have a career in illustration, right? Or like when you did, you get used to all of that. Maybe not
you
the
do.
one-on-one collector side, but you definitely get used to deadlines, speed, And okay, you got to get this done exactly the way that the client wants it, because of course the client is the one who tells you exactly what they want, versus, in fine
Right.
art, you can come up with almost anything. And then the collectors have to come to you, but you have to put yourself out there. So it's a little bit of a back and forth. So it's a little
Right.
different. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, most definitely. And I think so often we don't understand that it really is a relationship driven kind of a calling. I didn't realize that when I first started. And I'll tell this little story. I was at a show, and a lot of times you'll see when artists are at the show, the artists will glom together. You'll see somebody that you know who's an artist, and you go over and talk to them. And there's all these collectors that are there, or people that you don't know yet. And you can spend your whole time just talking to an artist or a bunch of artists that you know. And I had one time, I had someone come up and insert themselves into a conversation that I was having with another artist. And they didn't know who I was. And when they found out, they said, "Oh, are you in the show?" And I said, "Yeah, absolutely." And they said, "Well, where's your art?" And it was a show that had many different rooms of art. And I said, "Oh, it's over in this room over here." And went on to talking to the person that I was talking with. My wife comes up afterwards and she said, "Honey, you may want to, if someone comes up and asks where your art is, you may want to take them over and show them." So I never made that mistake again. But it's just one of those things that's not innate unless you realize that you're building relationships. And it's nice to talk to the people that you know, but it's much better to go up and talk to someone maybe who's looking at your art or someone else, and find out what their tastes are in art, and start that conversation, where they're from. Do they have any artwork? Is it prints? Is it originals? What do they look for in a painting? I just find that if you start talking to people about what their likes are, the conversation is so easy. I mean, people love talking about themselves. And so you just go down that road, ask them a question, and you can just nod for 10 minutes, or a lot of times you'll find you have a lot in common. I have made such good friends doing that. And to this day, not just people who buy my art, but people who you just generally like, you genuinely like. So it's a great experience if you look at it as, this person has something to offer me. I don't know them, but I know we have things in common. We just have to figure out what they are.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's it. I'm off my soapbox.
No, I think you should stay on the soapbox, because you might have more things to say that are really, really good to tell others, who
Good.
are interested in the business of painting and selling paintings and fine art.
Okay.
But
Good.
before we dive into the more of the logistics, I do want to know, do you, because you made that transition from illustrator into fine artist. Do you find that you pulled in certain things of illustration into your paintings, and what have some of those things been?
Well, when I was an illustrator, I I I was good at doing drawings and watercolor and airbrush. The airbrush fell to the wayside because I started doing my illustrations in Photoshop. And to this day, I will composite a lot of my images in Photoshop, but then I will do a drawing of my proposed painting, just to make sure that everything's going to work out, get the values all right. So there's that. But I think for me, let's see, for going from being an illustrator, I had to teach myself how to do oil painting. I never did oil painting. I was always too intimidated by it, and because that's what real artists did. And so, like I said, I got up in the morning and I started painting. I'd paint for a couple of hours, and on the weekend, I would go out and I would paint plein air one day out of the weekend. And I decided to do that because what I'll always do is concentrate on what my weakest area is. And my weakest area was painting a light effect. And the number one way to learn how to paint a light effect in your paintings is go out, go right to the source. And all of the people that I admire as painters, whether it's Matt Smith or Bill Anton or Scott Christensen or Bill Joe Paquette, Bill Joe Paquette, they all painted in plein air. And that was the thing that I really admired the most about them. So I would really encourage people, if you don't go out of your studio presently, but you want to become a fine artist and paint full time, that's going to be one of the best, fastest ways that you can make that transition. Because there's so many things that you have to learn to deal with. Some of them, just right off the top of my head, speed. You got to get fast. You have to paint a painting in an hour and a half, 2 hours at the most. If you're really pushing it, you have to deal with changing light conditions, the clouds, the sun will go in and out. So you start painting this beautiful scene and the clouds go out. How do you deal with that? Well, you lock down your light effect early on, or you paint the shadows in. You have to get used to dealing with wind, with bugs, with dogs coming up and investigating you, with looky-loos, people who come up and they want to tell you that their great aunt Mildred used to paint on saw blades, and so one of the things that I do, I love talking to people, but sometimes if I'm struggling with a painting, I will put on headphones that will just go into my shirt, just to have people think that I can't hear them. And so I'll ignore people if I'm struggling. And that undoubtedly will be the time that people will come up and want to see your painting, is when it's just all going sideways. But you know what? Everyone who's ever come up to me and talked to me when I've been painting on location, they just think it's cool that you're there. They have no clue whether it's good or not. And sometimes, I have made sales when I've been there. You always keep your business cards with you and try and get their name and phone number if you can. I mean, that's another part of relationship building, is sometimes you never know who it is that's going to be coming up and talking to you. So that's another way of networking, believe it or not, if you don't have your headphones on.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. It's like Murphy's Law. It's like the moment everything's just
Yeah,
going wrong, it just goes worse. And
yeah,
someone just has to come up and
yeah. And it
So
will. It will. The more
it
you
will.
do it, the less it'll go wrong, but it still
Yeah,
goes very wrong. Yeah.
that's true. Yes, it'll just
So
go wrong in a different way.
we jokingly call it painting frisbees.
Ah,
So, you just take and throw it away.
yes. Yeah. Yeah. Oh man. Maybe it's a boomerang too, because you could like, throw it away and
Could
then
be.
take it back and and then just
Yeah. If you're painting
sandpaper it.
if you're painting on the edge of the Grand Canyon, that can happen, or on the edge of Canyon de Chelly. I was doing a painting one time with a group out at Canyon de Chelly, and it was very windy
Mm,
on the edge of the canyon. And I don't know if you've ever been out there, but it's
mhm.
all sand.
Yeah.
So it's very windy. And I call it my sand painting. I still have it to this day, where all the sand that was being blown around got blown up onto the wet paint. And so you
Nice.
can just feel it.
That's pretty
So,
cool
but you
though.
get a million stories. Yeah, it really is. It is.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like recently, or not so recently, but in the past few years, they discovered on one of Van Gogh's paintings, there was actually a grasshopper stuck to it.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, yeah.
Poor guy.
So yeah, poor guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, and a very old grasshopper is stuck to one of his paintings. So it's really nice. That's the other side of painting plein air, where the environment
Yeah.
literally can sometimes interact with the work. Um,
Yeah.
and it creates a nice memory.
I just have to mention, I just recently watched a documentary on Van Gogh,
Oh,
on Joanna. Um, can't remember her last name now, but she was married to Theo,
mhm.
and Theo died within 6 months of uh, Vincent dying,
Oh, wow.
and so she inherited all of these paintings. She had hundreds of them. She didn't
Yeah.
know what to do with them, but she was bound and determined to make Vincent famous,
Mhm.
because Theo kept talking about how Vincent was this genius. And so that was her life work. Bonga, that was her last name, Joanna Bonga. And she spent the rest of her life, she had only met Vincent twice in her lifetime. She spent her life, it was her mission to make sure that Vincent became famous. And towards the end of her life, she actually ended up selling one of Vincent's paintings, one of his sunflower paintings to the National Gallery of Art,
Wow.
which would have been kind of the ultimate. But nobody would have known who Vincent van Gogh was if it wasn't for Joanna, and she didn't even like Vincent that much, I think, because he was kind of an acerbic character.
Yeah.
So the fact that she was willing to do that for her husband, Theo, and Vincent's brother, that's so wonderful, because the world could have lost that.
Yeah.
But thank goodness for Joanna. Anyways, I just had to mention that.
Well, I didn't know about that. Go Joanna.
Yeah,
That's how
yeah,
it is. And she
yep,
benefited from it, of course.
she
Making
did.
tons of paintings.
She did.
And she was
Yeah.
probably like, might as well make something out of this. So that's a
Well,
smart business lady.
the thing is, her brother came to her not too long after Theo had died and said, "You have all these paintings, sell them. Get rid of them." And she knew that if she sold them off like that, people would never know who Vincent was.
Mm-hmm.
So she would loan them out to exhibits for the Impressionists, and then rich collectors, because Impressionism was really starting to catch on, they saw his work, and he was really admired by some of his contemporaries, some of his peers, and they started talking him up. And of course, his story, it's just still captivating to this day. One of my favorite parts of Vincent van Gogh is when he was in Arles, France, and was in the Yellow House and painting, and he just made his breakthrough with his technique. And of course, that's where his psychosis came up and bloomed. But anyways, I love the story of Vincent. I
Yeah.
probably wouldn't have liked him much as a person, but as a driven person, an artist, just you gotta love him.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? His story isn't so different from today, in the sense
Mm,
that, if you want to sell your work, you have to put it out there. And that's exactly what his sister-in-law did, right? She like
yeah,
put his work out there like a
yeah,
proper, because that's the other thing. It's like there's this issue of a lot of artists, uh, especially back then, right? Which I believe that's where the starving artist thing came from. It's late 1800s, where a lot of them did end up in poverty because no one was buying realism. So of course, it
right,
also joined in with the creation of the commercialized paint tube. So a lot more colors were
hmm,
available, and that's where Impressionism got its wonderful array of colors. But
right,
of course, a lot of that had to be, oh god, they had to really fund themselves by getting their work out there and making friends with
yeah,
other impressionists. I think I heard that
yeah,
they used to swap paintings sometimes, or even like give away a
all the
painting
time,
just to have food. Uh,
right,
like to the
yeah.
restaurant to be like, "Hey, I'll give you this. Please feed me."
Yeah.
But that's
Well,
how
and
it
Vincent
was.
did that quite a bit. It not only did he trade for food and some lodging, but he also traded with a lot of other artists. So
Mhm.
Joanna not only um, got a lot of his paintings, but she got a lot of other impressionists who were just starting out. So
Right.
she did okay, but she didn't have to do that.
No,
But
she
yeah,
didn't.
and it's kind of the same way to this day, just because so many artists have gone down the um, abstract path.
Mhm.
And, for me, I don't understand it. I would never poo poo it if someone loves it. But trying to be a representational artist in this day and age where you have to be wild and really out there, it's difficult. It's difficult to get that underneath to get that traction. And so one of the other things that I will say, as far as this being relationship-driven career, and that is I've gotten into two of my galleries, my main galleries, actually, yeah, two of my main galleries, because I was in a show, and either the gallery owner came up to me afterwards and said, "We'd love to represent you," or the judge came to me afterwards and said, "Would you like to meet this gallery owner that he was in?" And I said, "Absolutely." And so this was now before they had, all these books that you could do. This was a print on demand. And so I did my portfolio as a hardcover book, and I sent it out to the gallery owner, and that's how I got in. Just you do your very best work, you stand out from the crowd, you're not afraid to you always got to ask for the sale. That's another big thing with trying to make an impression and make inroads into making a living as an artist. Never be afraid to ask for the sale. And when I first started out, I never asked for the sale. If you were looking at one of your pieces of art in a show and you were talking with someone, you can always just say, "Can I wrap it up? I can come out and hang it in your house. I'd be happy to do that." And you would be surprised the number of times people say, "Yeah, okay, let's do that." And so, yeah, I think that's probably one of the biggest pieces of advice and the biggest epiphanies that I had was people just want to be invited to make that sale. And sometimes you can do it on Instagram, or you can do it on Facebook. If someone shows an interest, personal message them and say, "I know that you like this work of art. It's available. What do you say we make this a done deal?" So, and that does work. It doesn't always work, but even if they don't buy that one, you've made another friend. Ask them if you can put them on your newsletter, and send them that, and stay in contact with them. People really appreciate that.
Especially if they love your work.
Anyways,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, if obviously, if they're looking at someone else's work, don't go up and ask them if you can put them on your newsletter. But if you've talking to them a little bit, yeah, people generally will say, "Yeah, okay." And the ones that say no, well, you want good people that are on your newsletter anyways, as far as you want people who are interested, not just one of the things that we used to do when we had the open studio here is we would have a giveaway of a print if you signed up for the newsletter. But what we found is that people were just signing up to get the print, not necessarily who are interested in seeing your work or collecting your work. So we've stopped doing that in favor of asking people once we've talked to them if they'd be interested in getting on the newsletter.
Yeah. At BoldBrush, we inspire artists to inspire the world because creating art creates magic, and the world is currently in desperate need of magic. BoldBrush provides artists with free art marketing, creativity, and business ideas and information. This show is an example. We also offer written resources, articles, and a free monthly art contest open to all visual artists. We believe that fortune favors the bold brush. And if you believe that too, sign up completely free at boldbrushshow.com. That's BoldBrush show.com. The BoldBrush Show is sponsored by Faso. Now more than ever, it's crucial to have a website when you're an artist, especially if you want to be a professional in your career. Thankfully, with our special link, faso.com/podcast, you can make that come true and also get over 50% off your first year on your artist website. Yes, that's basically the price of 12 lattes in 1 year, which I think is a really great deal, considering that you get sleek and beautiful website templates that are also mobile friendly, e-commerce, print on demand in certain countries, as well as access to our marketing center that has our brand new art marketing calendar. And the art marketing calendar is something that you won't get with our competitor. The art marketing calendar gives you day-by-day, step-by-step guides on what you should be doing today, right now, in order to get your artwork out there and seen by the right eyes so that you can make more sales this year. So if you want to change your life and actually meet your sales goal this year, then start now by going to our special link, faso.com/podcast. That's faso.com/podcast. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah,
If you do have the opportunity to like physically talk to someone, because it's one thing to like post it on the internet and be like, join my newsletter
yeah,
versus, face to
yeah,
face, making a connection with someone. That's a
yeah.
lot more, I'd say more authentic. Because the
It
internet,
is.
it does have this bit of a like a barrier of
Yeah,
anonymity, really. You don't really know the person on the other side of the little text box, right?
right,
Because you just get
right,
words that you can understand however you want. But with
right,
talking to someone, you get that body language, you get the rest of the 90% of the
right,
communication, which you
right.
miss out on via text
And
only.
so I would say that that's why it's important for people who are trying to break into the business or just people who like to do it, enter shows.
Mhm.
I have the YouTube channel where I talk about, and one of my videos is I was a judge for a certain show. And I tell people what I was looking for um, as an artist or as a judge, and what I absolutely will not award a prize to if someone. Well, that was. I have another video where it's 10 tips on entering an art judging show.
Mhm.
And but the other one is I tell you go through the different paintings that won an award and why I felt like they were deserving of it, why they stood out. So if you get a chance, find out what shows are in your area or in your state or even national, and go ahead and enter those shows. Um, and if you enter them, if they're local or in your state, go to the show, go to the opening. That's where you're going to make your connections. That's where you're going to meet collectors. That's where you're going to meet the gallery owners, the people who might want to invite you to the gallery. Make sure that you meet the gallery owner, thank them for having the show, and start that relationship with them. It doesn't have to be, well, I could get into the gallery because of them. It's just cool to meet people who love art, and gallery owners definitely love art.
Yeah. Yeah. And I have heard from other artists who work with galleries that, working with a gallery is very much like a marriage in a lot of ways. Because it's such a long-term relationship, and
Yeah,
it really requires a lot of communication and a lot of, back and forth understanding.
nurturing.
Yes,
Yeah,
nurturing. It takes a lot
yeah,
more work than people think, and that's also a
yeah,
really good reason to talk to these gallerists, because
right.
maybe you have a dream gallery and maybe you talk to the gallerist and you realize, maybe we're not such a great fit, right? And that's
Yeah,
okay, because there are other galleries, and other ways
yeah,
too of making a living as an
yeah.
artist. But if you want the gallery game,
Well,
you got to play the game.
you do. One of the tips that I will give out that
Mhm.
I have realized was that if you get into a gallery and the gallery owner says to you, well, we'll try you for a little bit, send me a couple paintings and we'll see how it goes. You probably don't want to be in that gallery because you're just going to be a place hanger until one of their other artists that they like better comes along. What you want is the gallery owner that says, I love your work. I would love you to be in the gallery. You know, um, send me your work. And you're going to sell so much more work through them if the gallery owner or the people who are selling really love what you're doing,
Yes.
because you can't hide that and you can't fake it. You know, I've been in galleries before where it was just that trial period and it never really worked out. The best gallery experiences I've had are the people who just really know who you are, first of all, rather than saying, I'm so and so, and my work is over here. Let's go look at it. If you say, I'm so and so, and they say, oh, yeah, okay. And, I love your work, and they really mean it. Those are the people that you want trying to sell your work. And it's worth it to wait until you get that kind of a reaction from somebody than just saying, okay, well, I'm going to go into this frame shop gallery and we'll hope for the best.
Yeah.
That's never the best way to do it. So find the people who love your work and nurture those relationships, because they're not only going to sell your work, they're going to introduce you to other gallery owners that will sell your work. And it's that whole relationship thing that we've been talking about. Yep.
Yes. Yes, it's
Yeah,
networking. But before
it
we
is.
dive more into networking, because I do want to get into that a little, you mentioned your YouTube channel, and I think you
Mm,
also mentioned how to pay homage to all of the past illustrators, you want to pay it forward by also teaching
mm.
others. Can you tell us
Hey,
about your YouTube channel?
yeah, it's funny because, I've been really blessed throughout my life of having some great teachers. And so whether one of the teachers I'll call out is Joe Paquette. He's a wonderful painter. He lives in St. Paul, Minnesota. I took my first plein air class from him. Mark Hansen is another artist who I really admire, and have taken a workshop with him. Matt Smith, and Scott Christensen. I've taken workshops. Um, so I know that there's a lot of people out there who want to learn how to do art, but let's say they don't live in a place where they can take classes, or it's too expensive for them. So I've decided that I'm going to do an art YouTube art tutorial channel where I do tutorials, I do demos. Occasionally, I'll do product reviews, and I try and teach people what I've been taught. Now, the videos sometimes are a little longer than other people's videos. It seems like 10 or 15 minutes is what a lot of people will do. A lot of my videos are a half an hour, because you can't do a storytelling painting or a nice drawing and zoom through it. You have to kind of tell them what you're thinking, why you're doing what you're doing. And so they're a little more in depth than what a lot of YouTubers will do. And I figure, well, if they want to fast forward, they can fast forward, but I'll give it to them if they're interested. And I don't have a Patreon page, which is where you can sign up and pay a certain amount every month and get extra things. Just because I'm busy with trying to get my show deadlines done, or my gallery paintings done. So I don't post nearly as often as I would like to, but I post as often as I can, and get a lot of great feedback. I love doing it because I hear from people who say, thank you. I wanted to learn how to paint clouds, and this is the best tutorial that I've found on that, or how to do a story painting, or how to do a sketchbooking, things like that. And so I post what I'm interested about, and I figure my audience will find me. So that's what my channel's all about. Steve Atkinson Fine Art. You go to youtube.com/Steve Atkinson Fine Art, and it'll come up. Or just put my name in and it'll come up.
Yeah, yeah. And
So
by
it's
the
a
way,
lot of fun. It's a
yeah.
lot of fun. Well, I mean, you do video editing,
I
but
do.
it takes a long time. Doing the painting is only part of it. Doing the
Mhm.
editing and deciding what you're going to leave in, what you're going to take out. And I always do a voiceover over it, because I can't talk and paint at the same time and be
Yes.
coherent. So I do a voiceover over the top of it. And that all takes time, finding the music, and it's the whole thing. But I
It
love it.
is. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, I mean, that it goes to show you know, it's almost like a labor of love. You're doing it because you really
Yeah.
do want to pay it forward, and you want to,
Yeah.
put the best out there for the people who care. I mean, I'm definitely one of those people who will watch a 30, actually, I will watch a 6-hour video. I'm not kidding. I did watch a 6-hour
I'm the
video
same
once.
way.
Yeah.
I'm the same way, but
Um,
I'm painting at the same time, so I'll just put it on, and in the background, and I'm looking up as I'm painting. So I
yeah.
get it.
Yes. By the way, do you have any works in progress, or do you have any or any like specific
Yeah.
paintings that you've been putting on, or
Okay. Well, let me show you. Um, right now, I'm working on finishing up the Prescott Rodeo poster. This is my sixth one I've done for him.
ooh,
Here's one that I did a couple of months ago. I don't know if you can
oh
see it or not.
wow. Yeah. Oh wow,
So
that's
this was
lovely.
this was a couple of years ago. So what happens, and this is the illustrator part of it, I will do a couple of sketches for them. This is this year's.
Oh, that's
They want
cool.
team roping. So
Yeah.
I have team ropers. And on this one, they wanted to, the whole reason for doing this one is that the Prescott Rodeo has both of the cowboys, when they're doing team roping, come out of the same side. Whereas most of the times in rodeo, one will come out on this side and one will come out of this side of the box. Well, they both come out of the same side. So this was the first sketch that I did for them. And they thought, well, not a lot of people are going to understand that. So
Yeah.
let's not worry about that so much. So I did another sketch for the team roping. And this is
Oh.
the one that they went with. And can you see that? I can't
Yes.
tell.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is the sketch that I did for them. This is the one that they ended up going with. And so right now I'm working on finishing up the painting.
Nice. Yeah.
You can see it. Yep.
Yeah.
So this is where the type will all go. And
Mhm.
I really wanted a moody piece that had the sun behind and the backlit
Yeah.
dust and everything. So that's that one. This one here,
Oh, that's
you can see
pretty.
that.
Yeah.
Native American girl that I met at the powwow. And so I thought I would put a Navajo blanket behind her, give her the
Yeah.
nice light effect up on top. And she's not finished yet, but she's pretty close. This one here, this is called, if you can see it, okay, this one's called A Hell of a Place to Lose a Cow. And so this one has the first layer of paint on, the first skin, I call
Nice.
it. So it has to
Yeah.
dry, and then I'll refine it, and I'll put details and adjust things like that.
Mm.
So, and then I'm not sure, this one here I might have to stand up for because it's probably too big. Let me just move it out of the
Yeah.
way here.
Let's
All
see
right.
it. Oh,
So
wow.
this is,
Nice.
I'm either going to call this one Easy Money, or it's a train robbery piece,
Oh, nice.
or The Wrong Side of the Tracks.
Ah.
So, we've got the big steam engine here, and
Mhm.
this is, I always do the drawing down first, and then I will cover it with the first skin of paint. And then after that dries, then I go over it with a second skin, and I'll adjust things. And sometimes when you're painting figures or horses, the paint will creep a little bit, and so the
Yeah.
horse will look too fat or what have you. So,
Yeah.
anyways, that's kind of what I'm working on right now.
Nice.
So we've got the engineer down here. The other thing that I'll mention about this is a big 440 steam engine.
Mhm.
This is the same steam engine. Well, no, let's see. No, this is not a 440. This is a 280, I believe. Anyways, I have to remember. Anyways, this is a nice big black steam engine. We've got
Mhm.
the engineer who's pointing down at this guy, and this guy's telling him to stop.
Uh-huh.
And then we've got sparks and smoke flying up down here.
Oh.
So he's applied his brakes.
Right.
But yeah, so
Yeah.
that's kind of what I'm working on now. I've got some deadlines that I have to hurry up and get things
Yeah. You're a
uh,
busy
get things
guy.
finished for. Yeah.
Yeah. That's
So
awesome though. I really love how, with illustration especially, there's a lot of movement, and I feel like that
mm,
the dynamism really helps also tell the story. I mean, even in like
oh
the
yeah.
the paintings from the Renaissance, right? Especially the ones by Michelangelo, like the Sistine Chapel is a great example. All the figures
Hmm.
look like they're moving. And
Right.
that's the same thing with illustration where to tell the story, you have to have sort of like figures that are going in one direction and maybe others in
Right.
a different one, and then you can kind of surmise what's going on just from that, which is so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the great thing about that is that you want to do a painting like this that tells a story, and each person that's in the painting, I want them to have their own story. I want
Mhm.
them to be a real person. You know, the thing that drives me crazy about a lot of Western paintings these days is that people will take a photo of a cowboy on a horse and they'll paint him just sitting there, or sitting on his horse
Yeah.
looking. And well, at least with this one here, a hell of a place to lose a cow. Yeah, they're sitting on their horse, but the story is they've got to find a cow down in that valley. So,
That's gonna
you
be a
know,
mess.
and I do find that for me, I love naming the paintings as much as painting them,
Mhm.
because a good name for a painting, it should extend the meaning, or it should help to explain a little bit of what you're seeing.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't do that, if it's, cowboy sitting on his horse, try and get excited about that. So I take a
Yeah.
long time to think about the names. One of the paintings that I did, I'll send it to you. You can post it. It's called A Good Way to Get Shot Down, and it's a bunch of cowboys that are trying to stop their herd from running because there's a
Mhm.
biplane that's buzzing them.
Oh,
And I learned the story from a World War II pilot that he told me that when he was learning to be a pilot in World War II, they used these airplanes as their training planes. It's a Stearman. And he said that they would just get so bored being up flying in the middle of nowhere that if they saw a herd of cattle, they would go down and buzz the cattle until they got them all running.
oh
And
man.
I thought, well, that would be interesting if there were some cowboys there. And so one of the cowboys is holding his rifle up. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's
So
probably
it's
ticked
things like
off.
that. Yeah. I got another one called Tall Tales. That's a couple of cowboys that are riding down a creek and they look up, and one of the cowboys is pointing up, and on the rock face, there's there are petroglyphs up there. So he realizes it's called Tall Tales, and he realizes that they're not the first ones to tell a good story. So it's
Mhm.
things like that. You tell a little story. It's just a little vignette. It doesn't have to be a big thing. But for me, that's what gets me in front of the easel every day, is try and make someone smile, when they
Yeah.
see the name and they see the painting. It makes sense.
Yes. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
I love that, and that also, the paintings of just a cowboy sitting on his horse, sure. I mean, that might appeal to a certain audience, but it's also really nice
Hmm.
to have the type of audience that is, they see the title and they see the painting, you're like, "Ah, love that."
Yeah.
That's how you know, right? That those are your
Yeah. Oh,
ideal
yeah.
people.
Yeah. One of
Yeah.
my most popular paintings is a painting called The Great Race, and it was done for a show down in Texas, and the person who put the show together called me and said, "I need an image for the poster. What
Mhm.
can you do?" And I said, "Well, if it's the show was about opening up the West and different modes of transportation. So I decided to do the first vehicle in each mode of transportation, put them all together and have them racing across the Southwest. So there's an airplane, which is the Curtis Jenny. There's a couple of cowboys. There's the very first production Model T Ford car. There's a chuck wagon and a stagecoach and a big 440 steam engine. So they're all racing at the same time, and people love to look at it and kind of dissect it and decide who's going
Mhm.
to win this race. So, I love having stories like that. It
Yeah.
really does get me going.
Yes. Yeah, and it also, it keeps the viewer on the painting too, because there's so much to again, using the techniques of illustration, right? You have a way of guiding the eye and to pull them in and to keep them there, which is ideally what people want people to do, right? What artists want people to do
Right.
is like look at the work and then
In all
stay
fine
there.
art.
Yes,
Right.
exactly.
Right.
But
Yeah.
yeah, and then I actually really want to get back into a little bit of that networking side because you're
Mm.
mentioning how, you've been a judge in competitions, and you're also part of the OPA. How has being part of like these groups, these associations, how has that helped you network and also get your work out there?
Hmm. Well, it's funny that you bring that up because I've met some of my best friends going to the Oil Painters of America, either the Western Regional or the national shows. That's where I've made most of my connections of meeting the artists that I admire a lot. You're in a show where it really raises your level of what you think that you can do. And so I've met artists that are at that show that we've gotten together afterwards and we've done photo shoots. We've hired cowboys and Indians to come together and we all come with our own ideas for the stories and we can set up scenes. So I've done that. I've met the gallery owner for the Western Regional Oil Painters of America show was one of the galleries that I got into. I had gotten the second place medal, and she came up to me afterward and said, "We'd love to have you in the gallery. Let's talk." And I said, "Sure. Let's talk afterwards." And so she was just excited about having me in the gallery, and that was a Western Regional show, but to be in a show like that and have the gallery owner really call you out and say, "We love your work. We really want to represent you." That's one of the things that I get out of being with the Oil Painters of America. I'm not a real joining kind of person. I don't join a lot of of different um, organizations, but the Oil Painters of America, it's made me a better painter than I would otherwise have been, because I know if I want to get into the national show, I have to do my very best work. And they're not just Western art. I mean, they're art of all different representational genres. So a very small portion of it is Western art. And so I really have to stand out if I'm going to be in that. And I know that if I get into that show, that I've done my job, and you hope that it sells. Doesn't always sell, but you meet great people. Some of the other things that I love doing with that is I go to the show, and usually they have an artist that will be doing um, a demo. So I can watch them paint. I can really figure out what it is that they're doing and what maybe I can incorporate into my work. And the other thing is that there's a lot of get-togethers. There's talks. A lot of times, gallery owners will get together, and they'll talk about what they're looking for in their gallery. Because so many artists, that's the first question they ask is, "How do I get into your gallery?"
Right.
And so that it helps to find out from the gallery owners what they're looking for and what will help you, whether they want you to call them on the phone, because 50 times a day they're going to get a phone call saying, "Oh, how do I get into your gallery?" Or if they want you to send them an email with a portfolio or drop it off at the gallery. It helps to learn all those different kinds of things. But I would just say on that, call the gallery and ask them how they like to get their submissions. That's usually the best way. But the other way to get into a gallery is to have somebody who will advocate for you.
Mhm,
So whether
mhm.
it's a collector who buys from that gallery, it helps to have them whisper into the gallery owner's ear. And another way is to have one of their artists um, talk about you to the gallery owner. A personal recommendation is one of the best ways to get noticed by a gallery.
Mhm.
I've found that having other artists say to the gallery owner, "This guy is really good. He's up and coming. You may want to take a chance on him and see what happens." Most artists are not territorial when it comes to their galleries. At least I've
Mhm.
found. A lot of times, you hear, "Well, artists don't want to recommend you because that's taking work away."
Mm.
But your work, if you get into a gallery, it lifts other people's works up, and they can get better artists in there. And the better caliber artists that you can be in a gallery, the better it is for you, because the collectors look at this gallery and say, this is a wonderful gallery. Let's see who else is there, maybe people that I haven't heard of. So that's one of the things that I've learned from the OPA and being in some of the other art groups. I was with the Western Artists of America. I think they're defunct now, but I was with them for a little while, and we started our own, which became defunct. But being in different groups, it can really help to lift your work up and make you paint better than you ever thought you could, because you're not just going to let anything out of the studio. You know, I think Richard Schmid once said he never lets anything out of the studio that he's not completely happy with. You know, but I've heard from other people that there are no finished oil paintings. There's just abandoned oil paintings. So,
Yep.
you know, it just depends on who you talk to.
Yeah. It could be both. It could be both. I mean, you could be happy with something and just say, maybe
Yeah.
I'll mess around with it later.
Yeah.
It's just a
Or you
pause
look
right
back
now.
on it and you say, oh, geez, I wish I had that painting back. I could do it so much better
Yeah.
now. But at the
Yeah.
time, it was the best you could do.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
as long as it's not like, oh, this is great. And then years later you see it and you're like, oh no.
Yeah. It's one of the reasons I don't do quick draws, because
Mm,
the Phippen Museum here in Prescott, they have a courthouse show called Western Art and Show and Sale, and they have a quick draw. I've done it a couple
mhm.
years, but there's really nothing I can do in 45 minutes or an hour that I want out of the studio, you know, for the rest of my life. It's a quick sale, yeah, but I'm protective of my brand.
Yes. Oh, and
Yeah.
speaking of brand, you
Oh
actually
boy.
mentioned a quote earlier, which is ride for the brand. So I
Hmm.
wanted to know, what does that mean for you? And how do you ride for the brand in your personal
Well, you
brand?
know, riding for the brand is just a fancy way of saying that you need to promote yourself,
Mhm.
and don't be afraid to do that every chance you get, whether it's doing a demo for somebody. Now, riding for the brand could mean doing the quick draw, but I've found that for me, and some people, they flourish on doing an hour painting. But for me, it's if you get asked to do a demo or to do a tutorial or to do an interview for a podcast, you always say yes if you can.
Mhm.
Um, Always ask for the sale. Always promote yourself without being obnoxious. You can talk about yourself without boring somebody to death,
Mhm.
and kind of watch their eyes. And if they start wandering around the room, you excuse yourself and kind of move on. But this is the kind of a career that you really need to not be afraid to talk to somebody about your artwork, because it's the only way that people are going to find you and get out
Yes.
there. One of the best things that I've found is having a magazine get
Mm.
in contact with you, doing a story on you. Um, and these take time,
Yeah.
because there's you have to do an interview a lot like this. You have to get them good quality artwork,
Mm.
and they'll do the story, and then they get back in touch with you to so that you review it and make sure that everything came across the way you wanted it to.
Yes.
So on this one, this was a dream come true for me. The Art of the West magazine is my favorite Western art magazine out there. And so after I did the article, they sent me an email and said, we want to put your art on the cover.
Yeah.
And so the thing that was really cool about it is that this was the first time that it was a fold out.
Wow. That's
Yeah. So,
awesome.
and this one was called Lunch Line.
Awesome.
Yeah, this was a scene that I came across when I was up in Colorado, the gentleman
Oh.
who takes care of all the horses. So doing everything that you can. A year or two ago, I had international artists get in touch with me, and I did a tutorial on how to do a nocturne.
Oh,
I had
cool.
an Indian who was sitting on the back of a horse and under the moonlight and everything. So I think a lot of times magazines are open to, especially like international artists, they're open to artists getting in touch and saying, I have this idea for a story. Here it is. Here's the painting. Take pictures along the way. And, they're always looking for good submissions.
Yeah.
Get your name out there that way if you can. Advertising is kind of hit and miss. And I say this coming from an advertising background,
Yeah.
but I went in when I started doing advertising in the magazines. I found that I was disappointed because I wasn't getting people calling up and saying, I want to buy this painting. And that's the wrong approach. Advertising really is about getting name recognition. And so you need to be in the magazine for a year if you can. Just it doesn't have to be a big ad, but if you're in there month after month after month, people don't realize it, but they come to know your name if they're looking at the magazine. So, that's the purpose of advertising. Sometimes you can sell a painting, but a lot of times it's just getting people to know that you exist and maybe getting them interested enough to take a look at your website because they like that particular painting. And then it can lead to other sales. So advertising, going into it, it can be a lot of money, but if you're in it for the long haul, it can pay off.
Right.
Yeah, but there's a lot of things you can do that you don't have to pay a whole lot of money for, and that's like being in the magazines, doing a tutorial for them, getting on YouTube, Instagram, posting regularly. I think I've gotten 1 or 2 sales from Instagram or from Facebook, but not much. It's really about, Instagram is more about connecting with other artists, I've found. It's not really a collector-based thing. But, connecting with other artists, it can get you in a gallery, if you find someone who you really connect with and they're maybe a little bit beyond where you are, and you start talking with them, and maybe they recommend you for
Yeah.
for getting in their gallery, or maybe they suggest a gallery that you might fit better for. So, like I said, it's all relationship based.
Yeah, and also, another part of, painting and making money is doing workshops. Do you have any
Yeah.
upcoming workshops you'd like to promote?
Yeah, I do one workshop. I'm gonna probably start to do some plein air painting workshops, but right now I've got a workshop that I'm going to be doing down in Texas in April the 18th and 19th at the Bosque Arts Center, and it's a on location sketching class.
Mhm.
And the reason that he's decided to do this is I sketch every day. It keeps my eye sharp. And if you can't see a drawing problem in your painting, you can't fix it. And so I really look forward to sketching every day at the end of painting. I eat dinner and then I come back and I draw. So at these workshops, these drawing workshops, we take people out with a small sketchbook and we teach them how to simplify the scene, how to break it down to just a few values. And the more sketching that you can do on shorter sketches, it's like learning an instrument. The more you practice for more often, for shorter periods, the faster you're going to get better. So if you sketch every day or 5 days a week for half an hour a day, it's going to be so much better than sketching once or twice a week on the weekend for 8 hours.
Yeah.
And so many people want to get back into art when they're empty nesters or young kids
Mhm.
who are just learning how to paint. A lot of them are skipping over you need to learn to draw if you're going to be a representational artist,
Yeah.
before you pick up the paintbrush. And that's one of the things I learned when I was going to college or taking classes at the atelier is you need to put your brush down, pick up your pencil and your sketch brush or sketchbook and fill up your sketchbooks it can be fun. You sketch the things that are, because I don't go out and sketch every day. I can't. So I sketch the things that are around me. I go on Pinterest. I've got urban sketching kind of pins that I'll do a lot of buildings and landscapes and cowboys and I love painting, sketching octopus. So I sketch a lot of octopus. They're the coolest animals ever, the creatures ever. So you just sketch the things that you find interesting. And if you do that and you do it for, let's say, a month straight, you're going to be able to look back at where you started a month ago and you're going to see some real progress. And imagine if you take that 15 minutes every day that you can just find, rather than sitting in front of the TV or scrolling TikTok or Tic Tac or whatever it's called. If you take that lost time and you put it to drawing, imagine where you could be in a year. I mean, you're going to be so much better when you pick up your brush because you don't have to struggle with getting that drawing down, right? Yeah, now you can concentrate not just on the values, but you can concentrate on the color temperatures and whether you want a high key or a low key painting. It makes your life so much easier. And so that's why I teach this class. It's like I said, it's going to be at the Bosque. I used to call it the Bosque Conservatory. That's what it was called when I competed there. But now it's the Bosque Arts Center.org/events. So you can find it there. There was another one that I was teaching in Texas, but unfortunately that one fell through because there were some problems with the gallery leaking. So he had to close down. But I'm also teaching this class, this workshop at the Phippen Museum. That's going to be in October. So you can go Phippen Art Museum. Let me see, what is it? The FhippenArtMuseum.org. And you can look it up there. But I love it. I love teaching people to draw. And I will tell the story that when I was about 13, I think. I was going to public school outside of Youngstown, Ohio. I went to Struthers, Ohio. And for some reason, they had this summer workshop that we went to Yellow Creek and I rode my bicycle every day and sat on the edge of Yellow Creek with my sketch pad and my little transistor radio. And that's where I learned to draw on location. And I thought, if I could do this for a living, I would be so happy. Aww. And I remember that going through high school and going through college. And so when the plein air craze started up, I remembered this is what I wanted to do. And so I started plein air, and having, been trained in illustration and drawing, I had that leg up. But for a lot of people who've been out of art for a long time, you need to slow down a little bit, and you can draw at the same time you're painting. I don't think that you can't do that. Mm-hmm. But if you skip that step, you're going to not be real happy at first with what you're doing. And so pick up your pencil, pick up your watercolors, whatever it is that you find that works for you, and do yourself a favor. And whether you take classes or just do it on your own, there's one of my big dreams is to go to an urban sketching symposium that they have all over the world. I don't know if you've heard of urban sketching or not, but people that get together and they draw on location and they share it at the end of their day what their drawings are. And it's this whole community of people that love the same thing, and they get fulfilled by being out and drawing on the street. Well, I don't live in an urban area. I live in the middle of on the edge of nowhere. Middle of nowhere is just out a little bit farther. But I'll go out and I'll sketch the rocks here. And let me see. I've got some sketches here. I just did this the other day. This was at
Nice.
Watson
Yeah.
Lake. And so I went up into the cliffs up above Watson Lake and I sketched. And so this was at Bannock
Oh,
in
ooh.
Montana. And when I can't go, I'll do sketches like this.
Oh, that's lovely.
So, this is in
Yeah.
London. That's St. Paul, I think, in London. And then this is Clovelly.
Ah,
And
nice.
so, I just sketch whatever I can. And
That's
I'm
awesome.
drawing all the time. I've got books filled with it. And it's
Wow.
so much fun to look back and say, what was I thinking? Or, you're gonna have times where the sketches just aren't working. And that's okay. And that's part of the process, is to say,
Mhm.
okay, maybe this wasn't the best this time, but what can I do better for the next drawing? So
Yeah.
you have to love the process, and I do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
And I
it can be
think
hard.
it can be. It can be. But that, like Tom Hanks says in A League of Their Own, it's the hard that makes it great. If it was
Definitely.
easy, everybody would do it. So,
Yes.
but it gets a whole lot easier the more you practice.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it is very, very true that drawing is extremely foundational, especially for painting.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
like to say, and obviously I'm just making up a number, but 90% of a great painting is great drawing. I mean, there's no way
That's right.
around it because you
That's
can
right.
have the most beautifully rendered, perfect values, everything. But if a drawing is
Yeah.
wrong, it is wrong. It doesn't you can't
It's
save it.
wrong.
There's no amount
That's right.
of perfect values and perfect
That's
rendering
right.
that will ever save a terrible drawing,
Yeah. Well,
especially
and I notice
representational art.
you've got the casts behind you there,
Yes,
and
I
you
have
got the
the lips.
skull painting.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll have to talk to you afterwards. And I'm looking for the Abraham Lincoln cast, just kind
Ah,
of the head and the
yeah, his
neck.
death mask.
I,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, not the death one, but just I think James Gurney has a copy of it. And
Yeah.
if you have a place where you buy casts
Yes,
online, let me
I
know,
do.
because I
I will
would
tell
really
you.
love that. Great.
Yeah, I'll recommend a place after. Actually, there are quite a few that you can look at. But
Good.
yeah, and then where can our listeners find more of your work?
Okay. Well, let me see. Um, my website is steveatkinsonstudio.com, just like it sounds. One of my galleries is Illume Gallery West, and I'll spell that ILLUME, IllumeGalleryWest.com, and TexasTreasures.com. So those are the most of the places. And then, of course, my YouTube channel is youtube.com/Steve Atkinson Fine Art, and you'll be able to find me there. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
and drop me an email if you want any. I'd love to talk art or anything, because this is such a lone thing to do. We're alone so much of the time. I love sitting down and writing. So that is Steve at steveatkinsonstudio.com. So drop me an email.
Yeah. Well, thank you
Yeah,
so much, Steve, for giving us some of your
you're
time
welcome.
and back to back awesome advice. I am over here like I need to take notes. I should have brought a notebook.
Oh, that's great. I can give advice. I'm not so good at taking it, but there you go.
Yeah, that's usually how it goes, no?
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
So,
thanks
well,
so
thank you for
much.
asking me to be on here. I appreciate it. It was a lot of fun.
Yes.
Yeah, and stay
Yes,
warm up there.
I will. And stay cool.
I will.